Everybody, we're back in the worldwide TFL studios. We're coming to you hot from San Diego with another episode 6 of the TFL Podcast. Super excited for my guest this time, and I'm super excited every week that I get to do this. But this one's special. It's obviously a legend that I'm really excited to get on the phone with and really talk about, and his friend John Tavares. So I want to introduce. Obviously, Troy Cordingley, who's a longtime friend of mine that we played together a long time ago in Coquitlam and junior, and excited that his career has lasted, through a number of decades as a player, as a coach, and is still involved with the National Lacrosse League. John Tavares, who played somewhere around 40 years. I think that was the number, but probably goes without an introduction. One of the greatest, if not the greatest player of all time. And I'm going to come in hot with a question, and here's a hot take. JT, who's the GOAT? Is it you or Gary Gait?
Wow, you read my mind. I'm gonna go with Gary Gait.
Why? Why would he be the GOAT, not you? He didn't last as long as you.
Well, I mean, is the GOAT, his longevity have anything to do with being the best player of all time? I would think some part, but I think, the time that Gary played, he played for a long time as well, just not as long. I think he's just a more dominant offensive player, and if you need him to play defense, he can do that as well. And he can create. He created a lot more opportunities for himself, where I was not able to do that. I definitely have to depend more on my teammates. So when you're looking at the best player, I would have to go with Gary all around. He can do everything. Yeah.
How about you, Troy? What do you think? Who's the GOAT? Paul Gait?
It's no comparison for me. It's JT. I've been around him for forever, and that's no disrespect to Gary or Paul for that fact. The three of them, what they did for the MILL and NLL has been unbelievable. But I just think that for me, JT made everybody better around him. I was in the dressing room.
He certainly made you better.
Yeah, true enough. And I just time after time I would see him do things, and you just shake your head, and so I got to live it. I got the front row seat for most of it.
Hey, Troy, that security question, the answer is Bandits. The transfer, I think.
Venmo. That's funny. Hey, so I want to take you back to the very beginning, and I want you guys to tell me who put the stick in your. And I ask every guy this question because I think it's vitally important for today's kind of fans, lacrosse players, to understand that we came to the game in a lot of different ways. And so I ask every guest that comes on the show, the first question is, who put the stick in your hand for the first time?
My brother Danny played lacrosse for a team called St. Christopher House, downtown Toronto. We lived just outside, about, 5-minute walk to the local park where they had an outdoor box. And my brother Danny played lacrosse, and I would take his stick literally every day I could and play lacrosse. So I have to credit my older brother Danny for introducing me to the game of lacrosse when I was about 4.
4. That's usually the age that most Canadians tell the story. And then when I ask the Americans the story, it's usually like sometime around 7th or 8th grade.
For me, it was my neighbor who played lacrosse in Brampton. I lived out in the country, so there wasn't very many houses out there. And I was a little bit of a shit disturber, so to speak, when I was a kid. And my father introduced me to the neighbor, and I started playing lacrosse, and I was probably about 4 or 5 years old as well. And I've been involved ever since. So it's
JT, are you surprised that Troy was a shit disturber?
No, not at all. I think he still is a bit of a shit disturber.
Just a little bit.
But, Troy's an intense guy, and that's the way he played, and that's the way he coaches as well.
One of my first memories of Troy Cordingley was he was playing for the Coquitlam Adanacs in junior, and I was playing for Burnaby, and we had a few interactions, let's say, that probably didn't go my way, but we had a lot of fun doing it. Once we figured out that that lacrosse, you could actually spend time with the other team outside of the game, and it wasn't all about what was happening on the floor. It was a lot more fun.
Yeah, it took a while, though, to realize that, didn't it?
Yeah.
No question. So, JT, I don't know if you remember this, but you played for the Vancouver Burrards a long time ago, and you and I
did.
had one tilt a long, long time ago, and I remember it only that you one-punched me and knocked me out, but I remember how it started. I didn't remember how it ended.
I'll email you as well. I think it was a toe-to-toe fight. There was a lot of punches being thrown. I don't know that there was a winner. I kind of thought it was a draw. I remember that fight specifically because I brought a coworker of mine. I used to work at the Pacific National Exhibition in Vancouver while I was there for the summer. And he came out to his first lacrosse game, and he loved the fight because for the next 2 weeks he talked about that fight and how it was amazing, and he could go over it over and over and over again. And from what I remember from his story and from what I remember the actual fight, it was you punching, me punching. I don't know if we landed many, but it was a lot of punches. I don't know if anybody actually won the fight. I think it was a long fight, but a draw.
I do remember playing it, and I know both you guys out west, and I'm from out west. You guys are both from out east, but we played in the Vancouver Agrodome.
Yeah,
and it was where at the Pacific National Exhibition, which is the PNE down in East Vancouver. It was where they hosted all of the horse events and the cow events and all that stuff. And so there was literally manure everywhere. It absolutely reeked.
Stunk.
And I was allergic to horses and all these animals. And so I couldn't breathe in this building. And I just remember playing in this place, and it was a great place to play. In fact, I think they filmed the movie Rocky IV with Ivan Drago, and it was supposed to be Russia in there because it was this dark, old, big building. They filmed that movie there anyway. It's not.
It always smelled like manure, and unfortunately, the smell wasn't very pleasant. But the arena was a perfect lacrosse arena, a very high roof, and seats all the way around. It was it was a really nice facility. Besides the smell.
Actually, if you remember, they filmed Happy Gilmore in there when Happy Gilmore, they were doing the Zamboni on the ice and he was singing.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
That was filmed in the Agrodome.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know that.
Vancouver movies filmed there. Anyway, that's just a funny aside. But speaking of buildings and great buildings to play, the Buffalo Auditorium, in my history, I love that building. I thought that was the greatest building to play in. And some of the conversation in a previous podcast that we were talking about with some of the old Wings guys was that there was kind of this chicken wire fence, this elevator gate that we were on the concourse. And to get to your locker room, you had to walk through the crowd to get back to your locker room. But what do you guys remember about the first time you ever played in the Buffalo Auditorium?
Well, the first time we played was against the New York Saints. And the first thing I just remember was the game was delayed because there was a huge lineup outside of fans waiting to get in. That's the first thing. And I think about the facility. It was very old, very intimate. It was like the people were right on top of you. The changing rooms were tiny. You would think, as a professional lacrosse team, they're going to have nice rooms. I think we used to get like any room that nobody else used. It was very small. But I'm like you. I loved playing at the auditorium. I loved how loud it was and how the fans were right there with you. Another place that reminded me, my second favorite place to play was the Boston Garden. It was almost identical buildings, but I would say the way the arena was built, it was just very loud, and the boards were just very flexible. Like you hit a guy into the boards, the boards would shake back and forth, and the crowd would roar. Now and then, I think they went to a little stiffer board in a lot of different arenas. Like I know in Nassau, Long Island, their boards were really hard. So we went from playing at the Odd, where the boards would shake a lot, to going to the Nassau Coliseum and you break your shoulder if you touch the boards.
Well, why do I think this story is going in a direction that I don't want it to go?
Eventually, we're getting there.
Why has everybody got to do this? Every podcast, we got to talk about the same fucking thing.
Well, that's the Steve Govett story. Sorry, Trey, when you tell the Steve Govett story, you have to tell the Steve Govett story at the Spectrum. Go ahead, Troy. Sorry.
Very hard boards.
It's the best story ever. The face plant is unreal.
Well, moving on. But you guys walked into the first time you ever tried out for the Buffalo Bandits, and back in the day, we literally tried out for it was 4 sessions. Like you went to this thing and you tried out, and I know that obviously Buffalo was a different spot. Les Bartley was a coach, and maybe earlier before that, I think you guys might have had a different coach, and then Les Bartley took over in the middle of the season. Maybe talk about just trying out for that team and what the atmosphere was like, because I know we all came from a place where tradition and history, and it was kind of everybody knew who you were in Canada, but going into the mill at the time, things were a little different.
It was in '93. I was drafted that year. It was the year after the first season that Buffalo started. And it was, we started in October, which was really, really early, because the season didn't start. Like, I can't remember how many games. I think was there 6 or 8 games during that year? Anyways, so, and it was good. It was, we'd practice Tuesday nights and then have to go to work the next day, get home at about 2, 3 in the morning. But, it was worth it. We were, finally called professionals. I know that a lot of us put a lot of time into the craft and that, but that first year, and JT will talk about it with regards to coaching, Buff McCready was coached for the first 3 games, and then Bart took over, and the rest is history.
That first year was a very competitive camp because we had all these Canadian, mainly Ontario lacrosse players trying out for this like all-star team in Buffalo, really. So we didn't really know where you stood. Like, I was out there and I was just trying to make the team. We had a lot of great players, so it was pretty intense. Like you said, Steve, I think it was about 4 sessions. I think we practiced out of in North Tonawanda, a place called the Sportsplex, where we continued to practice for years after that. Made the team. Buff McCready was the coach. We lost our first game, second game, and third game. We were just kind of getting used to the rules and playing against a lot of American players, which, they were kind of unorthodox, if you will, for a lot of box players. Like, the guys would shoot on the wrong side, switch hands, very athletic. So it was a totally different game, and just getting used to the officials and whatnot. But after the first 3 games, we went on a bit of a tear, and were able to win that championship and continue on for the next year too.
What do you guys remember about, because I was on the other side of this as a Canadian guy that ended up in Philadelphia, and I lived in Washington, D.C., or just outside Washington, D.C. for a long time as I went to school in Virginia, and ultimately ended up on the Philadelphia Wings. And the rivalry between the Wings and the Bandits was pretty intense. And I think probably for, let's say, the late 80s into the mid 90s, we played in a lot of championships against each other, and there was a lot of battles every time we played each other. It ultimately would end up in the bar called Le Club, which we all enjoyed a few times, but and Philly had its own cheesesteaks and all the rest of it that went with it. But talk about that time. What was that like for you guys?
Well, that was probably the best rivalry, and I still think there is the best rivalry ever in NLL, where we always did meet in the finals and that. I know there was a lot of hatred. I know that. There was, that was good lacrosse too. It was, there was some beauty cheap shots and it was just good. It was good, tough lacrosse. But I think we took it as, I know I did, was Canada versus USA. Mm-hmm. And, it was, they were the best of the best. Americans were on for the most part on Philadelphia. And, you know, we were, like JT said, we had the best of Ontario guys and playing, and you know, there was no shortage of hatred. And actually that's where, for me anyways, you know, I was always taught that you weren't allowed to talk to the opponent. You weren't, you know, you have to hate them as much as you can and that. But, you know, with lacrosse, that's where I first learned, you know, that there's more to the game of on the floor, there's off the floor. And a guy that pops into my mind that, you know, who I became acquainted with was Jimmie Rodgers off of your guys' team. And you know, there's a guy that literally is probably the funniest guy I've ever met.
Well, I will say this. He's been described at least a few times on a few episodes of this podcast as if Las Vegas was a person, it would be Jimmie Rodgers. So I suspect you liked him because he was probably buying drinks for you.
Yeah, I did not like going out with that guy.
Yeah, you were out all night if you went with him. That's for sure.
That's fun.
Cali BBQ is proud to be an official sponsor of your San Diego Seals. Buy our slow smoked barbecue at any Seals home game or online anytime at www.calibbq.media.
Tell me about, you know, where you guys end up in I want to talk a little bit about the summer of 1997. And I had Gary and Paul on a couple episodes ago, and we talked a little bit about the development of when the Mill became the National Lacrosse League. And the National Lacrosse League doesn't get born if not for some of the rivalry, where Paul Gate was attempting to bring a group of guys into the league and create an opportunity for single entity ownership. And I know, you know, JT, you were involved in that from potentially the other side with Russ and Chris. And tell me a little bit about that time and how your motivation was and how you kept your teammates and your thought process about going to play or keeping.
Are we talking about when the PLPA formed?
Yes. Well,
when they were still switching leagues
in '93, right? When we switched leagues in '97 from the Mill to in the off season, in the first negotiation or second negotiation, I guess, of a new collective bargaining agreement, and what happened there with Peter Schmitz and a large contingent of people that that changed the face of the National Lacrosse League and created a new league.
Okay, 97. There was a lot going on because Russ and Chris, Fritz and Klein there, they were trying to keep the league going, and they were trying to recruit like guys like Paul and Gary to play, and kind of felt like, well, at least it made us feel like if they had Paul and Gary and anybody else to play, they can run the league. And we were trying to form a players association. Back then we were getting paid like $125 a game, the first year player, second year player, $150, and we were playing in front of 10, 12,000, 15,000 people in Buffalo. So, we tried forming a players association, and with that, possibly comes some stoppage of lacrosse. And, like most players from Ontario back then, like we loved playing summer lacrosse, we loved playing pro lacrosse, and, it was a hard thing to do to sit out. So, thank God we didn't have to, and the PLPA was formed and we started getting treated a little bit better. But those were some trying times there. It kind of felt like it was tearing some players apart, especially like guys of, Paul and Gary. Kind of, I mean, I can't speak for them because we were kind of told that they were going to play regardless, and we kind of had to make our own stand. And I don't even know what happened. I think they got some different owners. For Rochester got an owner. I think Nassau, Long Island got an owner. And Chris and Russ kept Philly, and helped me out with the other ownership groups. Like, I don't remember.
Well, the whole thing started with Frank Duras, Steve Donner, and Rochester.
Duras, Donner, yeah, those are yeah.
And there was Syracuse, and if you remember correctly, I think there was a Boston team that Peter Schmitz was working with that ultimately never played. But a lot of turmoil through that time frame. And Troy, I think you and I actually spent a ton of time on the phone that summer trying to figure out who was doing what and trying to figure out how to triangulate all of the processes that were happening at the time. And look, I was just a plug role player, but I wanted to keep playing lacrosse. So
yeah, I think that speaks for the majority of the players. Like, as bad as we were getting treated financially, we still wanted to play lacrosse.
Yeah.
And, $100, $200, to me, it was just, I loved playing, and I was probably going to play regardless. But, I became friends with Dave Suckamore. I got to know Peter Schmidt and got to know those guys. And, I was in favor of the players at that time and point. So I was willing to take a stand, but I'll tell you, deep down, I really wanted to play lacrosse.
Well, the good news was, Raj was on my team, so he was buying all the drinks, so you could keep your check. Most everybody else was spending their game check in the bar. They were actually – I will never forget guys signing their checks, game checks, in the bar over to the bartender, literally to the bartender. Your major indoor lacrosse league check, you'd sign in the bar.
Well, you would spend
give it to the bartender, and then you had your $83 to drink for the rest of the night.
Exactly. Was that what it was? The $83 after taxes?
Well, I remember $125 after taxes was $83. That was my first check.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I should have kept them, but one day we'll do that. Tell me, hey, Troy, tell me your best chugger story, your best Steve Dietrich chugger story. I mean, and he's going to watch this one day, and I want him to watch this and be very upset that you told this story.
Well, I mean, it's not too graphic, I guess. But and it was, I never played with Chugger in the NLL, but I had the opportunity to coach him. And he's a very superstitious guy. He was always very superstitious. And I remember, talking to, I was coaching with Darius in Buffalo, and I was talking to the offensive guys, and Chugger at the time, would walk around the dressing room, picking up garbage and stuff like that while I was speaking. He was just very superstitious. Nothing could be on the floor. Any tape balls, anything had to go in the garbage. He'd walk around. While I was talking to the offensive guys in the room, he was walking around, and once he passed somebody, there'd be guys throwing garbage on the ground behind him. So I'm trying to keep a straight face, trying to, talk about our plan or whatever. I can't even remember it. And he would turn, and there'd be a trail of garbage behind him. So he would go and pick it up, and then the guys behind him on the other side would be tossing stuff on the ground. And it was just very comical. And
at the same time, he's literally talking to himself, psyching himself up for the game, going over different shooters. So he's talking to himself, picking up garbage, not having a clue the guys are throwing the garbage on the floor on purpose. I thought you were going to tell a story about the time we put a pizza in the net, and he ran from one end to the other faster than anybody else.
Or there was the time where we were playing Calgary, I think it was the last regular season, and Tyson Lees jumped and elbowed him in the jaw and knocked him out cold. And we're on the bench, and Andy Ogilvy just says, and Chugger is out cold. And Andy Ogilvy says, somebody go get a slice of pizza, whop it under his nose, he'll be fine.
But just for the record, Steve Dietrich is a pizza connoisseur. He loves pizza. He could eat pizza 3 times a day.
JT, do you remember the 2005 All-Star game? It was on NBC, and it was in Calgary. Do you remember?
In Calgary, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Do you remember you guys played the night before in Buffalo, I think? Tell that story.
We did. I didn't remember, but we did play the night before. We drove to Toronto that night to catch a charter plane, which we thought we were really special getting on the charter plane.
You guys thought you were big? You guys
yeah.
Big
Oh, it was awesome. We didn't have to go to the airport, the terminals. We had to go to this specific place where there's chartered planes. Thought it was a big wig. We get on this thing, and the bags are literally in the back. It's like being in a van. You can see all the bags, and they pack them in the bag. And we get on the plane, and it's pretty late, and that's after waiting, I don't know, an hour or two. I think we were waiting for some Toronto guys as well. They had a game. Long story short here, we get on this plane. There's absolutely no heat on the plane. None at all. We are freezing our butts off. And get to Calgary, and we played. And that game was, I was excited about the game. It was on NBC. I thought that was a good opportunity for the league to grow a bit. But that flight was a flight that I'll never forget. I froze my butt off the entire way.
Is it true, JT, that every road trip you celebrate a birthday?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
He might be 1,000 years old.
Troy, is it true that he celebrates a birthday in every restaurant?
He still does it. He still does it. You think, now he's a coach, he would
Well,
be
I mean,
a
I
little
don't.
bit more
If
mature,
any
but
waiter or servers listening to this, I don't want my secret out. But I'm going to go on the limb and tell you, yes, that when we have a team meal on a game day, I get somebody. Lately, it's been Ted Cordingley to tell the one of the waiters or waitresses that it's my birthday, because often there's no dessert, and I like my sweets after my lunch. So
I've never been involved in this.
80 or 90%. So we have like a pregame meal at lunch on the road after our shoot around, and we get one of the servers to bring out a dessert, and they put a candle on it, and they wish me a happy birthday.
Do they sing to you every time?
Well, the guys do. Yeah, pretty much the team does every time.
Steve,
so the guys know exactly what's going on, and they sing me happy birthday, and I say a couple words thanking them, and off we go.
I used to drive with JT to we played in Six Nations. We used to go to practice, and we used to always stop at Tim Hortons to get a coffee or whatever. And no word of a lie, we would stop, and the lady would serve us, and he would tell the lady that he was there that morning and got a stale cookie, and he wasn't happy. And
Don't
always get a free cookie. And at one time, he told the guy he had got a stale donut, and the guy gave us a free dozen donuts.
Yeah.
I've only heard this story. I've never been a witness to the story, but
which one? The birthday story?
The birthday story.
Well,
I think it's hilarious. Every time I've heard it from different guys, I laugh, knowing what I do about you. I just think it's hilarious that you basically dupe every restaurant that you go into for a free dessert.
Well, it's not right. It's mainly at the hotel. It's more of like one of the the rooms there. So
you make your wife and your kids sing happy birthday to you when you go out too? Like,
no, I don't even know if they know I do that. But maybe I'll tell them after this podcast.
So if you're going to sit in a locker room, in the NLL locker room, whether it's today or yesteryear, and knowing that JT played for 1,000 years in this league and had probably 100, a couple hundred, maybe 500 or 600 teammates after a long career, who would you not want to sit next to in an NLL locker room?
Well, I mean, there's so many guys that I've played with, but more recently, it's just easier to answer that way. I'd have to go with a guy like Mark Steenhouse. He
not recent?
Yeah, for me.
That's not very recent.
Isn't it? What is that, 10 years ago? Better than 30 years ago.
Why would you not want to sit next to Mark Steenhouse?
Yeah, I was just going to tell you that. He does not.
Why don't you tell me?
He does not change his socks. So he'll have the same socks for the entire season. So his bag is a little stinky. And two, he's a guy that you don't want to prank, because when he pranks, he goes all out. Now, I'll let Troy tell you a story about one of the pranks he pulled on him in a moment. And the other guy I'm going to have to go with is David Brock. And I'm only going to say David Brock because if you know, you know.
You know. I don't know.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
So Troy, you can tell him the story about what was I just talking about?
It's funny actually that would be the guy. I never got to play with Mark.
Mark the hotel.
Yeah, I never got to play with Mark. I got to coach him, but I would not want to sit beside him either, just because of the pranking issue. So, I used to prank guys myself, and I can't remember what I did to him, but it was very minimal what I did to Steiner. Just a little prank, and he just looked at me and said, "Okay, it's on." Blah blah blah, whatever. So it's about 5 minutes before our bus is picking us up to take us to a game. We're in a hotel, and I go to put on my suit and all that, and my dress shirt is tied in a knot, it's in the sink full of water, and I've got no other dress shirt. I have no other dress shirt. So me being a rookie coach, I had left my door open and I was talking to some guys and things like that. And he went into my room and just trashed my room. But, I had to find a dress shirt. So I went out and found the lady who threw my dress shirt in the dryer for about 5-10 minutes. And anyways, I ended up wearing a damp dress shirt that day. So that was the last time I ever pranked him, because he goes all out and he does not stop.
A quick break. This episode is sponsored by Manscaped.com. Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene. If you've been listening to our channel for a while, you know that we are big fans of Manscaped and their Perfect Package Essentials Kit, which is the world's finest all-in-one manscaping kit that makes manscaping safe and easy. And just when you think they've got it all figured out, they take it to the next level. I'm excited to be one of the first to confirm that after 18-plus months of research and development, the new Lawnmower 3.0 waterproof body trimmer has just been released and comes with a ton of new upgrades. Get 20% off plus free shipping from your Perfect Package 3.0 purchase when you use promo code SEALS20 at manscaped.com. That's code SEALS20 for 20% off at manscaped.com. Now, back to the pod.
So I want to talk about Billy Dee Smith for a minute, because everybody thinks that Billy Dee Smith is, the meanest person in the history of our game, and was always afraid of him. No question. I mean, on the court. But I had a little flavor of Billy Dee Smith in the 2006 World Games with Team Canada in London, Ontario, and found him to be one of probably the biggest teddy bears, nicest guys you would ever meet, kind of off the floor, and genuine quality guy, which is indicative of probably a lot of lacrosse players that, you go to battle with, and fans look at them and think that they're the worst people in the world, and then all of a sudden realize that, if they got to know them off the field or off the floor, they would understand that they're good guys. But tell me a Billy Dee Smith story that you guys remember.
I don't think I'm allowed to tell anything about Billy. Jordy, have any Billy Dee Smith stories?
What I remember about Billy is there was a switch. And when he went on the floor, he turned that switch on. And he was probably one of the most intense. He was intense. And trash talker, he might be the best ever at trash talking. But then I saw Billy, as soon as he come off the floor, he would spend time with kids, kids that want autographs. He would chat with the kids, and he was just, like you said, he was a big teddy bear, and it was just glad that, he was on our side, because, he a lot of players feared him. They were intimidated by him, and he might be one of the best defenders ever to play the game.
Yeah, Billy is a great guy. I've developed a really good rapport with Billy. We became really good friends. And I'll tell you, whether he's on the floor or not on the floor, I'm glad he was on my side for most part of it. I hate when he's on the other side. He's coaching and helping coaching in Halifax right now. He still scares me being on that bench. I want him to be on my side. And Billy is a great guy to have on your side. And the one thing about Billy always liked to look good, like whether he was playing or not. He liked his shoes. Hey, JT, you like these shoes? Look at these shoes, man. I got my new shoes on. And he liked the new style of shoes. And, besides, his personality on the floor, you wouldn't even know, you wouldn't believe, like you were saying, Steve, that he could actually even turn that switch and become the animal that he is on the floor if you didn't know him as a lacrosse player, because he's a really, really nice guy.
Troy, you used to be able to chirp. You were a big chirper when you played, I remember. But JT, you didn't chirp a whole lot. You let a lot of other things speak for themselves, which maybe it was just, guys that weren't as talented as the GOATs that, No,
I didn't like chirping. I thought when people chirped me, it just kind of created a fire in my belly and just wanted me to perform better or kind of take your number and just kind of get you when the opportunity presented itself.
Have you guys watched any of the documentary about Michael Jordan and
yes. Yeah.
And do you see any of you in Michael Jordan, JT? Not you,
Me?
Troy.
I mean, I would like this. I would like to say yes, of course. Like Michael Jordan, he is an amazing basketball player, greatest of all time. And I won't lie if when I'm watching, I'm looking for those comparisons or parallels and see if we share any similarities. And we do have a few. Him and I like to gamble.
How about the fact that I actually, and never having been in a lot of locker rooms or on the same team with you, but you weren't the type of guy that motivated your teammates in a way that was. I like to have fun. I don't think there's a parallel there.
No, not at all. We're
let me tell the story.
We're different. We're definitely different that way. But the one line that I like that he said that I hope that I was like that was I would have never asked my teammates to do anything that I didn't do. And I think I played most of my career that way, with the exception of the last few years of my career, only because I was so much older and I couldn't do stuff like just do the dirty work, like getting loose balls or getting a big goal or just doing like making a big hit. When you're mid 40s, it's hard to sometimes do that. So I hated that part of my game late in my career. But I think that's the one line. That's the one line that stood out for me.
Did you treat Troy like Scottie Pippen or Scott Burrell?
No, I think I treated all my teammates the same.
Hey, one thing I do remember though is when I first started playing with JT, because I was more of an intense person. I was very, losing was the biggest. I hated losing. Let's just put it that way. I was a poor loser, whatever. But going into the first playing with him, and I'm rocking in my stall and trying to pump myself up and trying to focus or whatever you have it. And then I see him JT walking around, and he's got a thong on. He's bending over, pretending to pick up garbage in front of a rookie's face.
I'm helping Trevor.
Right? And and then I'm just thinking this, what the hell is this guy doing? This guy's an idiot. And then we go out on the floor, and I'm busting my nuts off just to get a couple points, and he finishes the game with 5 and 5 or whatever. Just how's this?
Well, fair? You know what? That reminds me of one player. I'm not sure you know this name. I don't think he played pro lacrosse, but he played with us in Brampton, some lacrosse league. Gus Liatis. We're in Man Cup, and I think we lost the game, and it was a tight series. And I like keeping it loose, whether we're winning or losing. I make the game. I try to make the game fun. I think, there's bigger problems than winning a lacrosse game. So in the change room, I'm joking around. All I hear is Gus Liatis complaining about me because I'm joking around and he's more on the serious side. And I kind of felt like he was blaming me because we lost the game because I'm joking around. Like, my behavior before a game will not dictate the outcome of a game. So if that's the way I prepare, then let me be. If you prepare, in your serious manner, then I'll stay out of your way, but stay out of my way, because I think we all have different ways of prepping for a game.
I do seem to remember hearing you tell the story that you were going to play forever, and
yes,
you were going to play forever, but you were going to play offense until they started stopping you on offense. Then you were going to go play defense, and then you were going to be a goalie. And whatever happened. You didn't play goalie. I know, and I didn't play the defense either. I went from a two-way player to strictly offense, and then I played offense for a long time. I didn't anticipate to play that long because my inspiration to play for as long as I did was Bill Gary, who used to be a goalie for Buffalo and Brampton Six Nations, and he was like in his 40s playing lacrosse. I'm like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So actually, I was playing for Buffalo, and Troy Cordingley offered me a coaching position. So it was either take my chances in net as a third-string goalie or take my assistant coaching job, and I couldn't do both. So I thought, if I still want to be involved with Buffalo, I better take the assistant coaching job. Troy, were you the reason that that the game went away from two-way players?
No.
Were you the reason that we started to specialize? I mean, if I pinpointed it to the one guy that couldn't play defense, it was either you and Kevin Finneran.
No. Wasn't me. It had to have been Finn. It was him.
You know
Listen.
what? I gotta cut you off. Finneran, Dallas Lily just posted a video of Kevin Finneran fighting. I didn't know he fought anybody. That was amazing.
I don't know that I ever saw that either.
Yeah, did you see it?
No, I haven't seen
Yeah,
it
he
yet.
was fighting. Yeah, he was fighting. He did a good job. I think it was a Rochester Philly game.
How great is the God of Goaltending YouTube page or YouTube channel? Like, you find yourself kind of getting distracted by going down the rabbit hole of watching old games.
All I know is my confidence has dropped significantly. I think I was an egg and spooner because I can never score on him.
Yeah, he has a lot of highlights of saving you, Troy. I don't think you scored a goal on him.
You talk about confidence. I was the guy playing defense that was getting skinned in all these videos of people. You guys were shooting on. I looked like a fool.
Well, you were skinned on that one hidden ball that I scored against Philly.
That was real bad.
Oh, that's right. That was that's right. You know, as soon as it happens too, when you're watching the video and you turn your head to make sure that the other D guy, you know where someone else is. And I'm not going to give you credit for actually planning. When I turned my head, you flipped the ball. But I turned my head at the exact wrong time, and I watched it over and over going, this is so dumb.
No, I actually waited. I've calculated throughout the period of the game how often you keep your head on the swivel, and it's not often. So the very minimal time that you do, I calculated that in 3 seconds you're going to swivel your head.
So full of shit. That's awesome. Hey, tell me who the most underrated player you ever played with.
Oh, I got to go with Neil Doddridge. And I'm going to give you a Philly person too. Hayek.
Who?
Can you hear? Thomas Hayek.
Thomas Hayek, great D guy, tough guy.
Yeah. For me, you know what? For me, it's every defensive player that's played in this league. We're so geared to promoting or whatever have it the offensive players, which they're very gifted in that. But for me as a player, I thought that offense is going to win you games, and we're the cat's meow, blah blah blah. But after coaching and seeing your foot soldiers and what they do, every defensive guy is underrated. Like it's just
how great is this, eh? Steve, you just told Troy he couldn't play defense, and now he's giving props to all the defenders. But I got to agree with you completely, Troy. I think the defenders, guys who don't put up numbers, don't get nearly enough credit. Like you see all these things, greatest of all time. A defender is never, ever up for any award like that or league MVP. And I always feel like the defenders get attention only when they score in transition. If you don't score in transition, you're not a good defender.
Yeah, defensive player of the year scores in transition. Yeah,
I don't get that.
Talk about goalies though for a second. And you guys have been blessed, obviously, with great goaltending over your careers as players and ultimately as coaches. And I obviously can't speak enough about the value of great goaltending in our game. I mean, you can say it about hockey and how much hockey means, goaltending means in the playoffs in hockey and a goalie that gets hot. But man, you talk about guys like Matt Vince, who obviously has had an illustrious career. And the joke on my very first episode was with John Grant being traded for Matt Vince, and probably made the worst trade in the history of the NLL, trading away Matt Vince for John Grant. But I tell him that constantly. He doesn't like it when I point that out, but
yeah, it's good to pick on a Burrow boy, though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, very much so.
Goaltending is the most important position in lacrosse. I firmly believe it. Goalies are your last line of defense. In lacrosse, you're always going to get quality shots. Your goaltender has to be your best player in your team. And if you look back at the history of all the championship teams, what do they have? What's the one thing that they all had? And it was goaltending. Like you look at Dallas, who won loads of championships in Philly. Toronto had Bobby Watson. So, the list goes on and on. Goaltending is huge.
JT, do you agree with that?
I like calming in goaltendings on goaltenders. I think there's a lot of great goaltenders. I think, the defense has a lot to do with how good goalies are, just giving them bad angle shots and whatnot. But, push comes to shove. You want a confident goalie. You want a goalie that communicates. A goalie's going to make big saves at crucial times. You think of hockey, Grant Fuhr, not the best goalie, but made a lot of big saves when he had to. And in Buffalo right now, we do have one of the best goalies. And I didn't realize how good Matty was until he played for us, to be honest with you. And not only is he a great goalie, he's a great leader, and he communicates a lot about what he wants. And that's crucial because it gets everybody on the same page, especially on special teams, man down situations, of course, where he tells the guys exactly what he wants and makes things a lot easier for everybody. As a player, I just got to share. As a player, I just thought every goalie was bad.
Of course you did.
But I didn't really think that. But I had to convince myself that.
Yeah.
Because if I thought that goalie was good, I psyched myself out. And I have Dwight Metke to thank for that.
What, Dwight Metke psyched you out? You thought he was good?
I thought he was the best goalie.
Well, he was wearing a mattress.
I played with Dwight in Vancouver, and Dwight is a goalie, a lot like Dominic Hasek. Apparently, Dominic Hasek and Dwight, they try on every shot in practice. They study the shooters and every possible angle. Dwight would say, "Come down this angle," and he'd learn exactly. I didn't know. He learned exactly what I was doing. So, in 1992 championship game in Philly, I was nervous that Dwight was going to start the game. I was so happy, and no offense to Dallas, because Dallas is a great goalie. I was happy that Dallas was starting the game. But as many of you guys know, he got injured, and in comes Dwight. Oh man, my confidence level just shot right down. Fast forward to overtime, I threw a backhand because that's the one shot I didn't take very often, and I knew that he wouldn't. If I didn't know where it was going, how was Dwight going to know where it was going? So
92, you win the game in overtime with a backhand shot on Dwight.
Because I took that backhand because I figured if I don't know where it's going, Dwight doesn't know where it's going. But Dwight Metke psyched me out because I had so much respect for him as a goalie that I always hesitated that extra millisecond before I shot with him, and I just kind of got it in my own head. So after that, I just said all the goalies are the same. I'm going to do whatever I want, and if they save it, they save it. If they don't, it goes in. So, thanks, Dwight.
Oh, that's too funny. So, yeah, I mean, look, the one thing that I really, I admire about Matt Vince is the guy stays in amazing shape. I mean, he takes the gear off. He's a physical specimen, and there's a number of goalies. Dwight Metke was one of them, and certainly Dallas that were very fitness conscious, and then there's a lot of other goalies that aren't because they ended up being the fat kid, on the playground that got put in the goal, and they never grew out of that. But Matt Vince, he was certainly that guy, and ultimately played. He played a number of times for Team Canada with a long pole. Played at Canisius College as a long pole defender. But ultimately was a goalie in box, and man, just an incredible individual as far as a player and I know a leader. So
he's definitely a true professional, and we're lucky to have him in Buffalo. Great goalie, great guy, great team player.
Hey, so I want to switch gears real quick and have you guys react to a couple names. I'm just going to throw them out, and I want to hear your kind of quick reaction to these guys.
Are we doing this simultaneously?
Well, you guys can decide who goes first. It's up to you.
You go first, Troy. We'll alternate.
Okay.
Tony Resch.
Intelligent. Very intelligent. Lots of respect for him. He, played the game and coached the game. And I've seen Tony around some of the youth tournaments down in the States. And, I have a lot of respect for that man. He's one of the good ones. JT.
You can go now. Do you remember who we're talking about?
I mean, I just know Resch as a head coach of Philadelphia. I was always impressed because I thought we had an all-star team in Buffalo, and Philly always competed with us. So I had to give him a lot of kudos for being a good coach. But I didn't know him very well.
Tom Marechek.
Backhander, pretty boy, great goal scorer, a lot of positives. But I must say, when I think of Tom Marechek, I think of a negative situation in my life where we're playing the U.S. in overtime in Baltimore, field lacrosse, and we're down by a goal in overtime. U.S. has the ball in our end. There's a quick turnover. I look at the clock. It's 10 seconds, and they have the ball. Turnover. Somehow Gary gets the ball. He throws it the full length of the field. I catch the ball. I turn around and I shoot. Sal Lacasio saves it. I watch the video afterwards. Tom Marechek's man comes to double me. All I had to do is, in my windup, dish it off to Tommy, and he would probably scored because he was one-on-one with the goalie. So when I think of Tommy, now I think of that play, unfortunately.
I was on that team. Junior and I talk about that quite often. Both him and I started that game, but we got pulled at halftime and didn't play, and I was pouting on the sideline, but jumping up and down as we came back from 13-2. And I remember that play vividly and had watched it since then. But there's not too many guys on the doorstep that you want to give the ball to other than Tom Marechek. But you weren't a slouch with the ball either. So it was a 50-50 chance that we were going to get out of that with a goal. And hey, these things happen. Troy, Tommy Marechek,
wizard. He might have had the best stick I've ever seen. He could do things. He should have grew up in this era with these kids doing all these stick tricks and things like that. Him and Junior have had the most amazing stick skills I've ever seen. And he was a good, like you said, he was mint on the crease.
So a GM in our league who is brothers of a player, Kurt Silcott.
Kurt, very loyal. His work ethic for the game and to learn to be GM and that was unbelievable. The thing that I liked about Kurt was he would always ask our opinions, even as players or coaches and things like that. When you got to make some tough decisions or whatever, he was a guy that relied on a core group of people and you got this to have a say somewhat, a little bit of ownership towards what was happening. So he was a good one. I liked him.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, great friend. Like you think he's your boss, but he's your friend. So it was nice of him to always want to make things better for the guys. He wanted to make Buffalo a great team to be with, and he took a lot of pride in his job, and he always wanted to try to get a winning team.
So National Lacrosse League named its Head Coach of the Year award, and you guys have both been head coaches, or you currently and probably in the future and formerly head coaches in the National Lacrosse League. If I said Les Bartley to you guys, what immediately comes to mind? You both played for him as a coach, and what do you guys think when you talk about Les Bartley?
For me, I think he was ahead of the game. He was the first one in our sport that I know of that used video. He was a great motivator. And he was also, he was really good at building someone's confidence. You pull you aside and just have a little chat or whatever he was. He was just a real genuine, he really cared. I was fortunate enough to win, the Les Bartley Award a couple of times in the NLL and to win something like that with his name on it.
Flex there, JT, that's a flex.
No
what?
Flex. This is honor. This is honor.
Troy just flexed on you.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't up with the terminology. I get it now.
Toot your horn, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, so he was he meant a lot to me, and he gave me my first start in the NLL as a player. So I owe a lot to that man.
So Les Bartley we talked earlier in 1992 that Buff McCready was our head coach, and Les Bartley was just a guy. He wasn't an assistant coach. He was just a guy helping out on the floor. He was like getting balls. He was the ball boy. He just got the balls in the corner for the next drill and whatnot. And, Buff McCready was the head coach. John Meridian was the GM. We're 0-3. And all of a sudden, John Meridian makes a drastic change. He makes Les Bartley the coach out of nowhere. Les Bartley is now the coach. And Les Bartley, I think the one thing that I really admired about Les was he was able to get the most out of every player. I think because he did give everybody confidence, and he took the time to talk to everybody individually, communicate with them, encourage them, and that allowed people to play freely with an open mind and work their heart out for him. But the one thing that, and I know Les has passed and was a great coach, was very successful. But the one thing that I never hear people talking about is in Buffalo, when he did his pregame speech, he would drop a lot of F-bombs. And we would count how many F-bombs he would have. Like, it would be F, this, F. And it was like 30, 40 of them in every pregame speech. So it was kind of the ongoing joke in Buffalo when he coached in Buffalo that, he was going to, how many F-bombs today? 50, 40? So it would be kind of an ongoing joke about how many F-bombs there was going to be. But he turned out to be one of the best coaches in the league. He was very innovative, as Troy said. And I remember one time he was like, just coming up with different strategies. Like, hey, what if we put two guys in the middle on the power play? And like just kind of different situations. And, he just kind of made you think about different scenarios. But he definitely thought outside the box, and he was very successful, and he was a great guy as well.
Fellow TFL, Colin Doyle.
Whose turn is it?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Great leader. great leader. I had an incident with Colin when I was I was playing major and he was junior, and I thought he was somewhat of a cocky kid in that, and I just basically flat out said to him, well, what have you ever won? And I got to coach him later on, and he told me that little conversation sparked a little bit in him, and he went on like just phenomenal leader. He would have the dressing room in his palm of his hands. He was so good at making sure everybody belonged, making everybody feel a part of it. But he also was a guy that would get in guys' grills and say, they need to be better. So he was one of the elite players of our league.
On the floor, he was definitely one of the best players. He was seemed like he was a great leader on the opposing team. Him and I went at it a few times. Nothing hard, no hard feelings on my part. Just a lot of respect going, one leader to the next leader. We played many games against each other. I think we both hated each other on the floor, and I got the opportunity to play with him and with Team Canada, I think in New Brunswick. Got to know him a little bit. When you get to know guys, we're all the same. It's easy to get along with guys when they're on their team. But, I kind of grew up in the same mold as Troy Cordingley. Is like, if he's on the other team, I hate him. So I played a lot of games against him, so I didn't like him when I played against him. And I respected his game, but I didn't want to let him know that. So now that he doesn't play anymore, I can tell him I can respect his game a lot.
Just to recap, you were in the World Games in 2007 in Halifax. It wasn't New Brunswick.
New Brunswick is close.
Was it New Brunswick? Yeah. Oh, God. Close. Where was it? You know what? I did not play in the final game. I pulled my hamstring. Playing basketball.
Hey, so I got two more. And one of these guys, I know you guys never played against, but you watched him probably play against you, and that's J. Jalbert.
Really fast transition guy. Really good off the draw. That's all I remember about J. Jalbert and his name. I thought, is this a French-Canadian guy playing? American?
He's from New Brunswick.
Shut up.
I never played against him, but I coached against him, and I got a lot of respect for him because I know that when we played Colorado, we'd be taking runs at him to slow him down and giving him the odd cheap shot, and he just kept going. Didn't phase him.
Another guy that I know is very close to you guys and long history, but Darius Kilgore.
Very intense coach, player, a great guy to have on your side, knows the game very well, and he'll do anything there is to win a game. And great goal scorer, hard shot, great feeder, fighter, thinker, very all-around player.
He literally did it all, right? Like he did do it all when he played. Like he would just as soon score and punch you in the mouth as you know, he was happy doing either one.
When he stopped playing lacrosse, my goal production must have went down because he gave me a lot of empty netters for quick sticks.
Yeah, my thoughts on Darius are the exact same as JT's. I do know that I played a lot with him on my line, and you know, I'm the biggest I was 165, 170 pounds, but I played like I was 200 when he was when I was on his line. He was intense, that's for sure.
So who was the guy that hit me in Philadelphia? I came out of the penalty box. He smoked me. Gabby Rowe.
Gabby Rowe.
Yeah. So Gabby Rowe makes a huge hit on me. My helmet goes flying, yard sale. I didn't see him coming out of the box. Gary Gates chasing me. I'm trying to kill a penalty. Get smoked. And Darius Kilgore comes off the bench and chases Gabby Rowe around the arena. Literally,
Gabby Rowe ran.
Gabby Rowe ran. Yeah, that was classic. And that's to attest what Troy is saying. You know, I'm not a big guy too. You have Darius Kilgore on the team, you can play like you're 250. Because
talk about that hit for half a second when he hit you and clearly blindsided you, which now is a penalty in the National Lacrosse League.
Yeah.
But you didn't stay down for long.
No, you know, it didn't hurt. It looked a lot worse. My body was totally relaxed. I had no clue that guy was coming. I think I was approximately at center floor, and he came from the penalty box full tilt. And the reason I didn't see him is because Gary Gate was on me, and Gary Gate was really good. I don't know what kind of stick check you call it, where Gary kind of puts his free hand around you without holding you and kind of wraps around, and Gary was really good at that. And at around center, if he did that and got the ball, he's on a breakaway. So focused on not losing the ball to Gary that I forgot about the time of this Gabby Rowe guy coming out of the penalty box, and he freaking ran at me and smoked me, and I flew, helmet came off, but I honestly I didn't feel it, if that makes any sense.
The video of that hit is on YouTube. People go check it because it's probably one of the most textbook like yard sale hits I have ever seen in my career in this game. And JT just pops right up and gets ready to play. And then the video cuts off, but basically Darius Kilgore chases Gabby Rowe around the floor for 30 seconds.
My 14-year-old son, Justin, he loves to show me that hit.
Another quick break. Coronado Brewing Company is proud to be the official craft beer partner of the Seals. Enjoy fan favorite Orange Avenue Wit and their new Salty Crew Blonde Ale all season long, and visit coronadobrewing.com to find their award-winning beers near you. Stay coastal. Cheers.
All right, so fellas, I always end the show with one question, and I love to get the perspective of guys that have been around for a long time and seen a lot of things in our league and throughout the game of lacrosse, Canada, U.S., wherever. But if you could craft and produce a 30 for 30 about our game, about our league, what topic would you guys tackle? What would be the story that you would want to tell for the ages that would stand the test of time?
There would be two stories. The one that comes to my mind is the rivalry between Philadelphia and Buffalo. Especially the players that are playing nowadays, I don't think they quite understand or are aware of how intense that rivalry was, and you know, it was unbelievable, right? Like it was just the
and it went for a decade. It literally went from like 89 to 98.
Right. So it was just a really, really intense rivalry, and there was a lot of hatred in that. And then the other one I would like to see, the 30 to 30, would be the pioneers of the game. Like, there's a lot of good players that built this NLL, and I'm a respect guy, so to speak. So like a guy like Tom Carmine, Randy Fraser, Tim Sudan, like these are just names off the top of my head. Finneran, Berge, those guys, these guys, built this, and I think a little bit of recognition should go their way. But just talk about the playing for $125, like Buffalo, we were lucky we could scalp some of our tickets to make more money scalping tickets than we did get paid per game. So, but you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of work that went on for what is today.
Well, hopefully this TFL podcast is bringing to light some of these great stories and bringing people, having some people that have been around for a long time as fans get to listen to the stories that you guys are telling and hopefully create a library of all the great players that have played this game. So that was my intention to start with this. But JT, what story would you want to tell?
Yeah, I got to agree with you guys, with Troy there, with the Buffalo-Philly rivalry that we had in the 90s, how long it lasted and how intense and tough the games were. But, I think of individuals on my team, with the exception of I'd like to know more about Rodgers out of Philly. And I love people to know more about John Rosa. And I love people to know more about Jason Luke.
Yeah. Jason Luke was a story.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the epitome of what you would call a shooting star. Like he wasn't around long enough.
Great guy. You wouldn't believe how nice and polite that guy was and how athletic he was. And unfortunately, he just never –
so fast.
Yeah. But you talk about, John Grant Jr. and Marichuk playing and their stick skills nowadays. Like Jason was way ahead of his time too. His flair for the game and his personality is. I'd love to know more about him, and I loved other people to know about him.
And it was an all too tragic story, right? And
definitely
not to bring everybody down, but ultimately passed away, I believe.
No, Jason Luke's is still with us.
Okay, so I'm sorry, his father passed away.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And it was a pretty tragic story. My mistake, but but the history of that story that I don't know all the details about had a tragic ending.
It did. Unfortunately, Jason just didn't get enough an opportunity to shine. I think he only played for a couple of years. But
well, thanks for bringing us down. But
no, I'm not at all. I'm thinking of positives, man. The guy was a fun guy to be around.
Let's talk about throwing trash behind Dietrich again. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I like the old 30 for 30 on guys that were throwing trash around Chugger.
Ultimately, as Troy was talking there, I started thinking, I hope in 20 years somebody asks that exact same question, and this league is a major sport like NHL and NBA, because I think our league is a story of its own. How are we not a major sport? The sport has so much to offer. I think it's one of the greatest products. I'm trying not to be biased here. I'm a sports fan. I love basketball, football, hockey, baseball, and I don't know how lacrosse is not up there as a major sport.
Well, as the National Lacrosse League enters its 35th year next season, and National Lacrosse League, MILL, and certainly the history of the game will look back on all of these stories that you guys have been telling, and certainly a lot of them that I don't remember and we don't remember that are going to be told by others. But man, I agree with you, and it's the work that you guys have done that we're all doing together to try and get it to that level. So I appreciate everything you've done. I've obviously been a huge fan of both your careers. I'm thrilled that we had the chance for you guys to come on to the TFL podcast. I'd love to have you on again, but thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. Love talking lacrosse with you guys. Love talking NLL.
Thanks, Steve,
Good to be
and
here.
thanks for all the goals you allowed me to score against Philly. I appreciate that.
All those hidden ball tricks.
Yeah.
Fellas, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon on the next episode of the TFL podcast.
Thanks, man.
Sorry, guys.